Okay, call to order, roll call.
So we have Arlene Zortman,
Here.
Carrie Snow, here. Genevieve, here. Melissa Berry,
Yes.
Molly O'Donnell, here. Lauren Sally, Sarah Arney,
Here.
and Kendra Dead.
Okay. All right. Everybody get a chance to look at the minutes from the April meeting?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Carrie?
I'll
Approved?
second.
Jenna? Any questions, etc.? Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Pass. Public invited to differ. One of these days we'll have somebody here. All right. Organizational updates.
Sure. So the only thing I have proposed on here today is an update on the spring recruitment process. So thanks to Melissa and Carrie for the time in conducting the interviews. Thanks for coming to your interview. The recommendation of the interview committee has been provided to the city clerk's office, and the LHA Board of Commissioners will interview candidates except for existing board members, so you don't need to do it, on Saturday, June 7th. And then they'll make the appointments at the city council meeting where they'll adjourn as city council and open up as the Board of Commissioners and make those appointments on June 17th. And so then the terms start July 1st, so our new members would be joining at the first July meeting.
Okay. And you can't share anything, right? Or you can? No. Well, okay.
They can share with
Nope,
the board
disappointment.
members if they'd like to, but I won't do that here on camera.
Okay.
There were really good interviews and good candidates, so
Yeah.
we felt good afterwards.
Yes, everyone was prepared and
Yes.
thoughtful and
Good.
good experience.
They look like good candidates. Okay. All right. And so we do this twice a year, right? Or just once a year?
We're now on to a once a year unless we have a resignation mid-year. But we're finally on that. We were in an awkward pattern for a while, but now we're trying to stagger all of the terms 3 years at a time.
Okay.
So we have one more, I think there's one more, there's a 2-year term on this one because I believe that's Josh's term. Otherwise, it's just 3 years for regular terms going forward.
Okay. All right. Okay. Items for input to the Board of Commissioners.
So we are in a couple times this year, we're going to be in an awkward schedule situation where the Board of Commissioners meeting is tonight instead of a week ahead. This is one of those months. It'll happen a couple more times. So I just included in here the memo that we wrote for the Board of Commissioners packet. We don't always have that prepared in time for this, and usually your input goes into what we end up putting in there, but I shared that for today. So the first item is, it's just really disrupting. That's
One of our sirens.
yeah, that is lovely.
That's your attention.
Yeah.
Thanks for the God.
All right, so the first thing on the agenda for tonight is an on-call contract for legal counsel for our development projects. We are putting this through as a sole source contract, which is not done very typically because obviously a lot of firms can provide legal counsel, but legal counsel is also one of those kind of funky areas in the procurement world where sometimes you there's a long-standing relationship, and in certain legal counsel really knows your situation and history over the years and is invaluable to your current decision making. So this is something we've been wanting to do for a while. For the past couple of development projects, we did a procurement for new legal counsel. We went out there and tested for other attorney offices out there. But really, in the end, Ben Doyle and his team have worked on LHA projects for so long. They're extremely knowledgeable and integrated into the affordable housing community. And their responsiveness, knowledge of LHA's history and background, and they just bring a level of service that's above and beyond because they offer up ideas. It's not just a response to our questions, they will offer up options that we hadn't even thought of sometimes. So it's been so invaluable that we thought that this was going to be worthwhile for our future development and just to have them on call and not have to hold up the development process trying to get one procured. So
I've had positive interactions with them as well. So
yeah, they're on Willoughby Corner, right? So this is something we're bringing to the board tonight. The board has to consider it because it's a sole source contract, and so that'll be coming tonight. So I don't have the actual. I didn't include all of the attachments, like the entire contract, and then for the next couple of items, there's some. Actually, I did, didn't I? I did.
Yeah, you've got
Sorry, I didn't include for the private activity loan thing. That's for.
You've got the terms of business. But
Yes,
that's
that's
scope of
so.
yeah.
I just wanted to see if there was any questions on this, any concerns about going about this route that you'd want to convey to the board.
I'm sure you said this and it just went right over my head. They have worked with you before, right?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yes. Often.
So since it's a non-competitive bid process, would that help just running the number of years that they've helped? Like I looked at their website too.
Mhm.
It sounds like they're great from your information and they have a good reputation. So I mean, obviously I think it's fine that you guys go forward with a non-competitive bid process, but maybe just even throwing in like we worked for them, with them or Ben for like 5 years or whatever it may be. And I know that he's sort of shifted to new communities law from his prior, and he worked with them in both capacities.
Mhm.
So, and then my only other question was, so I guess his old firm or whatever is Brian Cave, Wheaton, and Paisner, and I just saw in the agreement that they kept it open for referring matters to them as well,
Yeah.
which I'm sure is good because they've done the conflict checks and all that.
Mhm.
Are they just like litigation counsel, or would they be like an advising counsel?
There is one specific attorney, Paul Smith, that is still at Brian K. Leighton Paisner,
Okay.
that we have used in specific matters that it's more like a kind of a special counsel relationship there, that they rope him in when there's a very complicated specific financing
Yeah, like
question. And so we've already done this when we contracted with New Communities Law, the new firm, and we still included Brian K. Leighton Paisner to have access to Paul on, I think that was the Village project. It was either Village or Ascent. It was one of our two most recent ones. And it worked out well in that capacity. The two firms are still very friendly and cooperative. Really what Brian wanted to do was that being part of Brian K. Leighton Paisner, I always get it confused because he's not the Brian in the Brian K. Leighton Paisner. But they are a firm that does a lot of things, and they were this little niche market for affordable housing. And so their fee structure and everything was much more encompassing of their whole line of work. And so when they carved off, really what they were trying to do is bring down the fees to better fit affordable projects, and they could still rope in the resources that they had at the other firm when necessary. So it ends up being kind of a win-win.
They don't require like a retainer or anything. I just was looking. I know they gave us their hourly rates, but which seem reasonable.
Which is great.
Well, that's like,
The lack of retainer is really helpful.
right, and I think that that's something that's factored into their hourly prices.
Yeah.
So the fact that they're kind of like extending to that to us seems reasonable.
Yeah. And they're used to the setup where typically on affordable deals, you're not paying all of your attorney invoices as you go. You pay enough for them to, you settle on what an appropriate amount is to pay as you go, but then they end up holding invoices at the end and just get paid in a larger amount at closing, which is often very needed for affordable projects, so they're very familiar with that setup and willing to do that.
That's all I have on that.
next item that's up for tonight is the forgivable pre-development loan for the Hearthstone Lodge 202 exit project. So we spoke to the Longmont Housing Development Corporation Board in their meeting last April. They, for those that may not know their involvement with LHA in the past, they were really, back when the state statute was set up differently where housing authorities weren't really able to do their own development, a lot of housing authorities set up 501c3 nonprofit arms to be their development arm, basically. So LHDC is the remnants of that, and also now that LHA is able to do more development, they are still a resource, not only a financial resource, but a resource of expertise for development. And they have investments that they're in the ownership structure for a couple of properties still, so they receive development fees and cash flow if available. But then they can reinvest that and then help support our projects that are getting off the ground. They're also, as we've talked about a little bit in the past, moving to really try and utilize that 501c3 nonprofit status to bring in donations that benefit LHA. So as part of their investments, they did this back for Village on Main as well, but pre-development funds are some of the hardest funds to get a hold of, and especially when you have a project like this where we need to do some legwork to determine A, if we have a project that's ripe and ready to go, and B, how do we size that project? Because we do not yet know if tax credits are the right way to go, just trying to do bond financing for a smaller rehab and then wait for tax credits. We don't know what size of project we have, so going out for a larger size pre-development loan is pretty premature. So what we propose to the LHDC is a small pre-development loan of $50,000 just to get us through due diligence and get some financial consulting to help us craft what this deal should look like. And then once we know that and have a real, base pro forma, then we can go get a real pre-development loan for a larger amount, probably trying to get that from the city's affordable housing fund. But this is kind of the get started, the due diligence fund. So that's going to be coming for LHA tonight. It is forgivable because if we have a project, LHA can repay the loan at closing to LHDC and they can reinvest those funds. If we do not have a project or it is really not the right time to move forward, then the LHA wouldn't have a way to pay back the $50,000, but it would still be valuable work done where it would help inform the timeline for a future project, or it's just going to be valuable information to have for how we move forward with the 202 projects. I really don't expect that to be the case. I think that we'll be able to handle a project of some scope and size, but we wanted to put that in there just in case, because LHA does not have a source without an actual deal to pay back. So that's coming tonight. Any questions about that? We do have a financial consultant on board, and we're kicking off with them, I think, next week. So we're ready to move on this, at least with phase one.
So on the promissory note itself, so my understanding is, the 0% interest, right? So, and I think it says that just in the first paragraph. So do we need that end part that says that the interest shall accrue daily? Because it was just slightly confusing to me. Oh, yeah,
It's probably
right.
a template thing.
Yeah, and it's no big deal. I just wanted to make sure that was.
I could highlight that tonight.
It's not a big deal.
And they can strike it if they
It's
make a modification.
no big deal.
It's certainly a template.
If it accrues at zero, then zero, right?
I mean, it's not, I think it's unnecessary to include here, but it doesn't cause legal confusion is what I think Tim would say.
I think that's true.
Is there any section that spells out what it is?
Yes. it's under the second paragraph of item 2.
Oh, perfect.
Notwithstanding the foregoing provisions, lender shall forgive any outstanding principal and interest. So the interest template language is all over here. Upon notice that the project will not move forward prior to the maturity date of this note.
Great, thank you.
I mean, I know the interest language, it will be, I mean, I'm already seeing, we've got notes about interest all the way through because it's our template and we just cut it 0. So it would probably be a good amount of changes, but I'll talk to Tim about it before tonight as well. Any other questions? It's a pre-development loan. There's one correction that we could make.
Reserve. And do you guys have a plan already for the money or?
Yeah, so it would be towards financial consulting. There's actually 2 consultants that pair together. One really does the finance and one does the actual RAD conversion where they've got experience in that specific type of project.
You do have a consultant?
Yes,
Okay.
we have a consultant procured. We haven't signed any contracts yet. We're doing a kickoff and so this is necessary for that. But then also due diligence, so we would have to do an environmental review because this is the HUD project. And then there's a couple things that go along with that. What's the site? Totally blanking, but where we go in and check a capital needs assessment. Jeez Louise. To go assess what the building needs done, and then that helps us build the budget. So those are the key elements of what we would use this money for. We expect to know what our deal would look like by about probably September is our goal. At the end of the summer, know really like what should this be looking, what should we be moving forward with. Okay. Good. All right. Private activity bond allocations. This is, I just wanted to kind of talk through this with this group, but I don't have the extremely complex legal documents that go along with it. But overall, so this kind of plays with the city and LHA. The city receives an allocation of private activity bonds every year from the state. This year it was $6.4 million. So this isn't hard money. This is access to tax-exempt financing. So basically awarding the ability to go out and get a loan that's tax exempt, which is really advantageous for affordable housing. The private activity bonds can officially be spent on affordable housing. It could be towards economic development. There's a lot of things you could do with it, but historically our applications have all been for affordable housing and for time immemorial. So we, the city side, put out the call for applications in March, and this year we received 3 applications. One was from Boulder County for Willoughby Corner, and I said, if we're not going to consider that, but if we ever are not able to extend ours within a Longmont project, we will always reach out to our community partners, which happens all the time. People are always, if a smaller community like Erie has an allocation, Louisville has an allocation, if they can't spend it, they reach out to communities. Typically they go to Boulder County first because they serve them, but there is that communication out there in a regional partner side. So we didn't consider that one. We have 2 applications that came through for Longmont projects. One was a rehabilitation of 130 units that are called the Parkside and Mountain View Plaza Apartments. They are both under HAP contracts. So these are not LHA properties. They do have contracts with HUD to basically have vouchers attached to them. So everybody there pays 30% of their income. So HUD does have some of those contract properties that are not through a PHA. So Lincoln Avenue Communities applied last year and got the $6.2 million of PABs from the city and applied again this year, and they're going out for some other ones available throughout the state as well, because they're trying to use all bond financing to complete a rehab. They bought the properties for $26 million in December, and they're trying to get the financing available to do those rehabs.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
Their property management company's out of Nebraska and they're horrible. Just so you know, they already lost the property manager.
Is it the new one since Lincoln bought it, or the
It's
same
new
one?
Since Lincoln bought it and she's gone. So right now both properties have new management and its maintenance is bad. I was over there last week. So sidebar,
Yeah.
sorry.
They are looking to do like a $10 million renovation. So
Where's this option? What's the address?
1350 Mountain View, and it's a senior community there, and then 1209 Tulip, which is Parkside, which is right by Lou Miller, and it's multi-family.
And they're both senior or just the?
Just the one. The one on Collier.
So they applied, and then the other application came from Atwood Commons, which is a new development that's trying to get going, where LHA is going to be involved in this project as a special limited partner. It's right down here on 3rd and Atwood. They've been ready to pull building permits for some time. They've gone through 2 tax credit rounds and have not yet been successful. And their last feedback from this last round was, you got to bring some private activity bonds, and then your application looks great. So they applied as well. I will be recommending to City Council on June 17th that they award the full amount of PABs this year to Atwood. The city's scoring system really does, it gives heavier points for deeper affordability and generation of new units. And so that is really what tipped it over the scales, but the scoring was pretty clear that Atwood met the city's priorities more. Also considering that Parkside and Mountain View got 6.2 last year, and Atwood, if they don't get this, then they're trying to restructure the whole deal, and frankly, we need new units to meet our Prop 123 commitment by the end of 2026, and this would give us 38 units that qualify. There's 72 units total, but 38 that would qualify. So that's going to be the recommendation going. The reason I'm talking about that here is that Atwood, the city does not issue bonds without a vote of the people. So what it can do with these private activity bonds it does every year is assigns them to an issuing agency, which is either this CHAFA or can be the housing authority. So Atwood will be bringing, assuming the city approves the allocation, that will be assigning their bonding to LHA, and we will put the bonds out for them. And that would come to the LHA board in July. Parkside and Mountain View are going out for the statewide balance, which means the state puts out local allocations to municipalities across the state. If they do not use them themselves or assign them to another community, they just get relinquished to the statewide balance. And then there's an application process for that. So Lincoln Avenue Communities for Parkside Mountain View are planning on putting through to the statewide balance. And they've changed their rules this year where the city can't apply for them. Last year the city applied for them because they already held the other bonds, and we could just package them up and send them all together. But now the housing authority would need to apply. And so we are helping them craft an application. They're doing most of the work. We're basically reviewing and signing to apply on their behalf. So we're trying to support both projects how we can. And just to let you know, there's this whole world of bond financing that also filters through LHA. And this is more just a kind of a, here's a whole other element of housing that we don't talk about very much, but I certainly spend from February to June or so, spend a fair amount of time getting it arranged. and there's very complicated legal documents that I am heavily reliant on attorneys to get through. So I just want to see if there's any questions. One reason I wanted to bring this today is, I mean, it touches LHA, but you'll see ahead of July, you'll see an actual agenda item for that. But I was thinking, especially after our interviews and when we were talking about just, issues in housing, I think that I could do a better job of trying to insert kind of nuggets like this into our advisory board discussions to talk about the broader housing world and other things that end up touching this, not that are just hyper-focused on LHA. So I thought I'd bring that just for either FYI or discussion, whatever you prefer.
I think that's good, particularly since they can qualify for vouchers, which is another,
I appreciate it.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else? All right.
What else?
So just whipping right through. Resident quality of life.
Again, this is open for the board if I want to bring anything forward, but staff doesn't have anything for this one.
I don't know. We'll make another something to this time. Okay. Rising issues in housing.
So this kind of ties to what I was just thinking about. If you all are amenable, I think putting something like this on the agenda for, we were talking about things that we were seeing in the paper or things that your lived experience is bringing up and challenges that you see in housing. I thought that this might be a good idea, assuming, sometimes we run out of time, but sometimes we don't, and maybe some people have ideas of things they'd like to bring up or things they've seen or heard. So I thought this would be more of a board member initiated based on what you're experiencing out in the world and bringing it for discussion to this group. If you're all amenable to adding something like that.
Yes. Do you, and I know this is probably a really off-the-wall question, with the tariffs that keep going up and down and sideways, do you anticipate there's going to be any problem with assent?
Not for Ascent. They put most of their orders in for all the materials in advance of any of this. We keep asking, is there anything, because if we do change orders throughout the construction process, then that's a new order. So we keep tabs on it with the construction crews, but so far they have not said that we're going to face any serious challenges there.
The only one thing that we will have a tariff on that's not going to be LHA is paper, because one of our met detector boxes didn't make it over with the other two because of customs and the holdup, so it was shipped back to New Zealand. So it's in process of getting shipped back, and then I guess from our partner in New Zealand, LA Customs is like weeks behind getting things shipped. So that is a huge issue in the fact that it was in the United States and it was shipped back. So we're really working toward that not happening again. And it would delay some of the things that we have to install them, right? So that's the only thing I can think of from you.
I'm sure we'll hit things in the future. We just don't have anything currently in the hopper.
Okay.
First of all, I think it's a great idea to have this as a monthly thing for you guys to talk to us and for us to talk to you about maybe stuff that's just not super settled. And I know, Molly, you said before in meetings, you kind of discussed what you guys are doing to keep in contact with HUD while there's a lot of changes to that. I mean, I think the proposed budget that they're debating now is like a 40% slash in, I believe, voucher funding with HUD. It could be more general funding, but I believe the 40% number is the voucher. That's just what I read in NPR and like the New York Times. Those are my two sources. So I don't, if you've got any, updates about any success you've had or challenges that you've had or the LHA's had with communicating openly with HUD going forward, any of that information is always helpful. And I know it's been really challenging for you guys so far.
There
in terms of
was a bright light for about 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And it was a great 2 weeks.
It was a great 2 weeks where we had a staff member at HUD that was really helpful and worked with us and we're running through our shortfall projection numbers. So, educating us on what triggers that they play with and all that type of thing. And then shortly after that, we not only got reassigned our rep, it has been reassigned 3 times?
No, we got assigned again, but it's actually from somebody that's in St. Louis, so they're not even local anymore.
And then, so we have, that's on the shortfall side, and then our actual.
No, that's our HUD rep side.
Oh, that's a HUD rep.
That's the HUD rep side. Our shortfall side has also the person that was assigned to us.
So it feels like
out,
three
gave
changes.
us another contact, and we haven't heard from that contact. So we're kind of in limbo at the moment.
We don't know, we literally don't know if that's because they're shutting down the Denver office. We don't know this yet. But all of our contacts are now in St. Louis. I think obviously being more local is better. But either way, the Denver office served a larger region, so somebody was always not that local, and we never met in person typically anyway. So I'm hoping just the location change doesn't impact us. It's more about the person and the responsiveness that they're. I mean, it might not just be the person; it's the system they're working with, right? And how many people are they now? How many PHAs are they now representing? We don't know. So we're kind of, at least we got solid information before this happened so that we aren't sitting here not even knowing where we're at. We at least know where we're at as of the time that we met with them. So it's a level of comfort there, but still extreme discomfort for the future. And yeah, we're just watching the budgets. I know the presidential proposal was extreme, but it also is typically has been extreme in other instances and then tempers by the time it gets to Congress. So we're watching.
So there's not any chance of asking for additional vouchers?
No.
Technically, we
I
don't
know.
need additional vouchers because we can go up to 513 vouchers. It's our area that has caused us to only issue out 119. So we have 100 vouchers we could
If our
issue
rents were lower.
if we had the budget.
That is something that we are starting to noodle with. Well, not starting. We've been noodling with this for a long time, but we're trying to see if the current shortfall situation means it's an advantageous time to start having the regional conversation about how our voucher program is affected by our unique regional relationship. Having really regional relationships across PHAs is very common in metropolitan areas, meaning, for example, we don't port people in from like a PHP voucher because it is an administrative layer that is significant. However, our geographical situation makes a unique challenge that we're trying to express to HUD and to our partners that we use. Our rents are set countywide, but Boulder rents and Longmont rents are extremely different. So we're mapping out right now, especially in a shortfall situation, what that means for us. And basically Longmont is shouldering the burden for the region without the financial benefit to do so. There's a lot of ins and outs to this that we're working on crafting, and I think we'll bring that back to the future meeting once it's fleshed out. But it all plays into what could we do if we're in a shortfall. The very worst case scenario is having to pull people off vouchers, which is that is what we are trying to avoid at all costs. And what do we need? What steps could we take to avoid that? And one of it is how do we fix the rents here in Longmont, because we are, where our payment standard is higher than the average rents in Longmont. And so what could we do to try and have to do haircut versus cutting certain people? That's what we're trying to avoid. So that'll be coming forward. But that's our big regional issue right now in all places that shortfall funding. do for regions outside, unless it's a PHP or a BCHA voucher, we do port them in if they're coming from elsewhere.
Okay.
But across, Boulder County, we don't port across for all of those.
Okay. All right. Development and other project updates.
Okay. I've already talked about the Hearthstone Lodge a bit, so I'll skip that one. The other, like I've said in the past, we're in that mode of doing early work on the next new build that we would like to do. We are working with the city, so ourselves, in terms of staff, but the city LHA, trying to sort out if there is land down in the South Main area, because the city owns a slice of land there, and we are seeing if the property owners adjacent are amenable to a potential sale.
So where the train is going to go eventually.
Close to that. So on the city side, we have the city holds the former Royal Mobile Home Park for future affordable housing. That is just south of the proposed transit station. The transit station is in engineering work right now, and they've got a stormwater problem. And so we might be looking at a swap with the city for a different parcel so that they can make sure they get the stormwater drainage needs met for the entire First and Main transit station area, redevelopment area. And so we're working through that right now. And if so, the land that is up for potential swap is at the south corner of Boston and Maine on the east side. So across from like the River and Dickens Farm Nature area. Nope. On the east. Nope, on the other side. I've got it in visuals. On the southeast corner of Boston and Maine, which is on the it's south of the Dickens Barn area, not the Dickens Park Riverside or north of the river. So the city has some land there that could be advantageous for a swap. It's in a QCT. It's going to be a signalized intersection in the future, so it could be a great little spot right there, and it could help trigger further redevelopment in the Steam area. So we're talking to city groups about how that might look right now, and if so, we would be interested in doing a mixed income project and try and include some sort of commercial or public use on the ground floor.
The mixed generation as well, right?
Yeah, it would be. Yeah, not age restricted. So we're in the early stages of sorting that out. Because again, we're trying to, LHA having another project hit in approximately 2028 would be advantageous to the budget. Having projects hit to meet our Prop 123 goals would be advantageous to the city. There's a lot of co-benefits. So we're trying to get that moving. I think that's all I'll do for development updates for right now. Except for, we talked about Ascent a little bit. Construction is moving right along. And we do still intend to set up a tour once it's a little bit safer to get around. Right now they're still walking across the boards and stuff.
So I did drive by there the other day and it really was moving.
We got our first inquiry from someone saying, I saw construction and I want to live there. Can you get me on a wait list? So we're talking about creating a wait list here soon, which is exciting.
What's going on with asking the floor?
I've got that under property updates, but I'm just going to do it. Okay, so we have completed, this is the flooring fix for Aspen Meadows. We've completed all the common areas are done. And today and tomorrow, they're wrapping up the last third floor unit. The second floor starts on Thursday. Well, they've already done 2 units on the second floor that were vacant, but the second floor occupied units start Thursday. And the construction teams have now gotten a flow going, and so we're gonna try and start condensing the schedule and do 2 units at once. I'm still waiting for a proposed schedule for them. If they don't do 2 units at once, we're in the building to July. I would love for that to happen quicker, as long as we can do it responsibly without messing with the schedule. Although, I don't want to adjust it constantly. I want it to be pretty predictable for the residents. So we're waiting for them to send us a schedule to see what that could look like. The residents are being very patient. It is for sure disruptive, but I really appreciate their willingness to just help get it done. Everyone's been happy with the flooring results after the fact so far. We do have, there's been a few residents that we're helping make accommodations for that either if they were bringing in home care services, if they're physically unable to get their unit ready, meaning, picked up enough and packed to have the crews do the work, or if being in the common spaces during the day is not reasonable for health conditions. We have done 1 resident so far into a hotel. We probably have a couple more coming. So we are covering the cost of that, and just get it done. So we're doing what it takes to get it done.
You're still looking at a date to get it done, right?
2 days.
2 days.
So they don't have to be out. So what they're doing is, in a typical unit, they come in, move the furniture and items from one side of the living room to the other, do that flooring work, tape down a transition, which is only like a 1/4 of an inch transition, so that they don't kick it, or it's not high enough to be considered a true trip hazard, but at least not damage the edge of the flooring. So they can come back in, all their stuff is back in place by 5 p.m. They can stay the night and then come back out at 8 a.m. again, and then they'll do the same thing on the other side. So I haven't heard too much from residents. Most of the concern from residents is in advance, not necessarily during or after. So we knew that in advance would be, there'd be concerns.
Yeah.
But I'm very pleased that the during and after has not been that we've heard. So, oh man, almost there. It's just keep swimming is the motto on that. I keep watching the schedule every day. I'm like, okay, 1 more unit, 1 more person. Doesn't have to deal with this anymore.
Do you want to continue with property updates?
Sure. So Lauren is on vacation, and Quincy is heading to the NARO conference, which is for public housing authorities down in Pueblo. So I'm covering for them. Okay, on hiring, we have 2 new assistant community managers, one for Sweets and Zinnia and one for Fall River Spring Creek. Their names are, Catherine and
Catherine Gonzalez.
Yes, Catherine Gonzalez. She wants to go by Kat, and then oh my gosh, I just blanked. Mackenzie, thank you. She just started. I just met them at the employee breakfast the other morning because we haven't had a all staff meeting yet until next week. And we're still looking for 1 more community manager to fill right now the Village on Main and Briarwood role. We might be considering, do we have the best fit everywhere? Do we have interest in some transfer? So we're considering that right now before we fill it specifically for Village, but we do have a community manager position. Kendra hired a new accountant. That was exciting for her.
She's excited to start, but we're still going through the HR process. So,
Well, then you're excited.
yeah. So hopefully by the end of May, we'll have her on board and start transitioning roles. Have a little breather room.
And this is one of those growing pains where we grow more and have more units, and that stresses the existing staff to the point where you got to spill over and start adding to match the growth pace. So that's exciting. It's a good sign for the
Angela.
organization overall.
Angela?
Yeah.
Onto the properties, we had a fire at Hearthstone. It was over a stove when someone was cooking. We did not have fire stops in place because the ones that we had were too thick for the clearance to the stove. So this is a thing that's been ongoing for a little bit of time, but trying to replace them with low profile ones, and we did not have that in yet, and we had a fire. But the entire staff, I was telling this to Harold yesterday, the city and LHA worked together for 5 years now, and we have that some of those emergency, urgent situations, critical crisis moments were all hands on deck in the first years as everyone learned this entire new way of business and new challenges to figure out. And now we have a solid team that responded, and it was so smooth for what it, for a fire. So smooth, and everyone just triggered what they needed to do, and we've had restoration companies and now working on getting contracts for the repairs completed. We have residents in hotels. But on the LHA as an organizational side, being able to get through those crisis moments as smoothly as we did, where everybody knows what they're tagged in for, that was really nice to see. It feels like you're watching the growth of the organization as we go.
And just a side note, how that all started, I heard on the radio come out, so I called Quincy right away. So he was able to get over there. Nikki was on scene. It was good.
So no one was hurt.
I was going to ask,
no one was hurt. We have damage beyond just the unit because the sprinklers went off. So we have water damage. But they did what it was supposed to do. So the remediation is underway. Village on Main we've had a couple of organizations come through. Ascent Hospice and Good Day Pharmacy came through to do presentations. Wheels on Wheels has come for lunch with residents while doing a presentation about their services. And they got a couple new residents set up with them during that. They started their quarterly birthdays again. This is kind of a Village on Main is back in action after construction's over, bringing the fun stuff back again. And Quincy has been the one that's really setting up all of those organization presentations and stuff. So Lauren wanted to make sure we could get him kudos for that.
The residents there love him. Like, he's been really great with
Really?
them. Yeah.
Oh, good. That's great.
Yeah. Very
I always love to hear that.
He's very personal.
Our new ACM at Fall River Spring Creek, is that Mackenzie then? Because Catherine's there temporarily doing training, right?
Yes.
But anyways, they wanted to give kudos to Nikki and John, the property management team over there, because they've been so helpful in training her, and so she wanted to make sure that she brought kudos after them, which is really nice. And then for maintenance, the general update is it's spring, and we're working with our landscape contractor to get all of our backflows inspected and irrigation and garden beds prepped and everything ready for the growing season. Do you want to do a little camera update, Sarah?
Sure. So we're up and running at Sweets, up and running at Spring Creek and Fall River. We had a little small hiccup when you went to view the cameras at Fall River and Spring Creek. All the images were upside down. So that was a quick fix. I was like, wow, what am I looking at? I thought it was neat. They are cabling Hearthstone and Lodge this week, and I met with ETS yesterday on getting some of the cameras in patrol mode for the exterior cameras, the pan tilt zoom. So I'm needing to come back to our staff group to decide what if any we want in patrol mode, and it basically it just moves. So right now they're static. I can get on and move them to view things, but in patrol mode we'll be able to see a little bit more. But it's really about maybe one camera on property to patrol certain spots that we can't see with it just being in static. Like, for instance, at the suites, the north side, we can't see that back door unless we patrol, so I didn't want to make all the decisions on my own on that. I want Quincy and Warren and Molly, if she's available, to pipe in on what we want as far as that. So after Hearthstone Lodge, we'll go to Briarwood and then AMSA, and then we'll be done. So that's all we're doing.
The last thing I just want to mention is that we had a perfectly clean Housing Choice Voucher Program audit, which is very exciting. And so we'll be sharing that good news as well. And we had a pretty much incredibly close to clean finance audit.
Yeah, didn't have it though. We had a new grant that came to us for the Ascent project that has a pullback feature. So it's going to pull back money if we don't meet milestone reports. And I recognized the full revenue and I wasn't. So they went back and forth and found an issue with finding. So that's the financial statement finding. What we have to do is a corrective action plan. Our corrective action plan is going to be, I saw another division work kind of a checklist to make sure that everybody's reviewing the grant agreement before it's signed so that we can know what accounting process need to happen, who's going to do the reporting, so all of that. Yeah, how often the reports are, and kind of validate, like, do we have the bandwidth? Can we make these deadlines and make those adjustments before the grant agreement signed? So that's going to be my action plan, is develop a process and procedural checklist so that when we have these coming in, especially if they're new, I mean, you get used to the city's platform, but the new grants, I know I scanned it for reporting because we always have the reporting issue, but I didn't scan it for the pullback. So, new and a learning experience. We learn lessons everywhere, I think.
That's a whole lot different than it was years ago. I mean, yeah, things are really good. Do you have any more information on True North? I know last week, council, I think, Harold said something
Yep.
about what was
We
going on.
got some money.
Yeah.
So the portal opened April 26th. We had almost 800 people on the interest list at the time it opened. And then before noon that day, we had 150 actual applications entered for 55 units. So we're 3 times oversubscribed, which is, it's good for the development side. It's like, oh my God, for the city side, for the community side. But it is enough for the developer to feel confident to plug away on phase 2. And so the team is all meeting, the sales team, the developer, and the city side is all meeting on Friday to go through all the applications and ensure that we have them in the order of preference that we said we were going to do, and that we've got people at least preliminarily qualified. And then they'll be speaking with their lenders for the next several months and hoping for the first closings in August. So it's super exciting. Everyone was pretty happy with the results. And the item that came to council last Tuesday was we got a $770,000 grant from the state to help for construction. So all of that money, every dollar that we get from an outside source frees up more of local money to go out for other projects, which is really cool.
Can you remind me that the source of?
So we have over the 4 phases, so 185 units over a number of years, there will be a $6 million cash investment, which is either city local funds or whatever we can pull in from other sources, which the 770 is the first of it. And then there was fee waivers, and the land was given at a discount rate. So when you consider the full investment, it's much higher than that, but it's $6 million for 185 units over however many years it takes to build.
And there's still preference going to, that's correct, city employees, right?
Yeah,
Did you guys see a lot of them applying?
They're up to, that's what I want to get, and I probably won't get until Friday when we sort through. I want to see how many city employees did we get
Yeah.
in the first one. I know multiple that put in. A couple of our own housing and LHA people put in, which is really exciting. And so I'll find that out on Friday. But we certainly have, of the 185, up to 24 are flat out reserved for city employees, assuming we have 24 that want them. And then there's other preference there for existing Longmont residents, Longmont, if you have a Longmont job and things like that. Or if you're disabled and cannot work, but Longmont history. So that is moving right along.
Okay. That sounds exciting.
I didn't do the occupancy report. I just skipped right into just verbal updates, but generally we're at 95% occupancy currently. We have been talking about this in the last year or so as well, that we expect some more vacancies coming. We've had a couple deaths at least one death over the weekend at the property, but in the past few months we've had kind of a wave. And then we have some upcoming vacancies that might reduce this number, the occupancy amount. So we're really trying to look at our waitlist process right now, get it purged, and get the property managers really engaged on trying to get these leased. We're talking about our rent amounts because we do hear that some people are either moving out because the rent is too high or are not interested once they hear the rent amount. They all are hoping for those, when we have a 30% unit open, it's filled. But it's more challenging to fill our 50 and 60% rents, and this kind of goes back to the regional problem where we're using older counties, Chaffa set rents, but maybe that's too high for Longmont. So we're talking about what to do there and what's reasonable if we are going to consider rent concessions, what would we do, that type of thing. We're going to do some analysis. But we don't have, right now, officially, any meth-contaminated down units. Don't hold your breath. But officially, not.
Officially not, you've got some
Officially
that
not.
you think but are, but you don't know yet.
We're
Unofficially.
probably good suspicion of it.
Yeah. But at the moment, we're still free of official ones. But yeah, so all of our vacancies here are, we don't have any hard turns here, difficult ones. These are primarily just vacancies, and the maintenance team is on it. The conditions of the unit are pretty much ready to rock, or at least happening on a reasonable schedule. It's just getting them filled. So that's a big priority for us right now.
So you're saying that a lot of this has to do with the rent. People are looking at it and saying it's a little bit more.
Anecdotally, we've heard this. We know that some property managers, they call the wait list and they're like, call me back when it's a lower percent unit. We don't have, I couldn't, show data that says that is the reason, but it certainly seems to be.
And utilities are included in their rent, correct?
And at least the senior properties. So, and that's something that, you have to get somebody on the phone so that they understand that, and they have to do their comparison. And of course, when you're renting out on the private market, if it's a larger, newer complex, you're not getting the actual rent until you sometimes you have to pay your application fee before they'll give you the full rent amount with all of the fees included. And so sometimes you're not learning what your actual rent is going to be until later, but the amount they market is what you sign up for. And so we know that if they're able to do the comparison, our rents would likely be lower, but it's really in the older stock, naturally occurring affordable is probably lower than what we're charging for our 50 and 60s for sure.
Yeah, I have people that look at my units they're like, oh, you're $250 less than affordable.
Right. Yeah. So that plays into, there's immediate things that we can do to try and affect change there. And then there's we've got a big old regional problem, when Longmont just is the most affordable in the region, and we are the source.
They
So-
just passed that new law, the all-in fees law. So I think that'll be super interesting, like you were saying, we don't, I tell people who apply, so in our apartment building, we include the water, the sewer, and the heat. It's just how the building's set up. And so that's in the rent price, and that's just a flat number. And so when I advertise mine, it's always a disadvantage to the people who are like, oh, it's lower rent over there. No, it's
Right.
not. It's actually like $200 more expensive than mine. So I think this new law, well, there's some more problems with it, but
Can you talk more about that? I mean, I don't know it.
yeah, so it's a junk fee. It applies to a lot of industries, but it's primarily targeted towards rentals, right? I mean, I think that's the industry that they were really targeting here.
Okay.
But basically, it's everything that you're. It has to be all in. So you can no longer charge fees for common space maintenance or pest control or some of those things that they're billing back for. Things that you can still charge for, like parking, utility bill backs, has to be disclosed upfront. The problem with that is that a lot of, we don't do this, because it's just too hard for us accounting wise, but, and I kind of figure it's my job to figure out what my utilities are year over year, but a lot of people do a bill back. So like, you'll see it in ads, like, water paid by owner, but water sewer bill back, like a BB. So they're billing back, and every month that could be whatever they decide to bill back. This bill disallows that, but it makes it really hard for the people who are billing back in an ethical way, because then now they're going to have to like pick a set price, and it has to stay that way for the term of the lease. So I think it's going to increase rents. It has to. Like, you're going to definitely see rents, advertised rents, and actual rents rise because of this. The unintended consequence. Here I'm the government. I'm here to help. I'm going to make it less. I'm going to make it less expensive by making it more expensive for you. Right? So this bill, while well-intentioned, has some real logistical flaws. It also applies to triple net stuff, which is commercial, which we've got some of too, and now, I mean, it makes the triple net stuff really complicated. Like, for rents in the commercial spaces will have to rise substantially to compensate because you're no longer able to just pass direct expenses along to the tenant, the commercial tenant. You have to somehow figure out what it's going to cost. Yes.
Yeah. Better.
So you're just covering yourself. You're like, well, I'm just going to take last year's and add 15% because that's what's going to happen industry wide. So advertised rents will be higher, which for us when we throw stuff in is good. I mean, good for us, good for you, probably for us.
What is the effective date of that one?
That one's January 1.
That we had our crime-free housing presentation with Christy last week. Pretty extensive PowerPoint. I'm mailing that to LHA and all the people in it. So when you have time, it's pretty. There's a lot.
Depressing.
Yeah.
I called it. Everyone's just sitting there like, I mean, just regulation after regulation after regulation on top of more regulation. It's just hard to keep up with for anybody. Like, there's a lot of small. Last year was the big. We really hammered on the industry, and a lot of bigger, like now the Fort Cause and Just Cause or whatever was a big one. This year was more like death by 1,000 little cuts,
Yes.
right? I mean, there was a lot of legislation snuck into others that impact housing, and it just passes, and you're like, wait, what? Like, we have to do what now? Yeah, there's some crazy things that they put in there.
I did a lot of legislative reviews as the bills were coming through earlier, and it felt like, they did big change last year, and then this year was trying to shave off little bits and pieces of that and modify little things, and is this a lessons learned, or is this just trying to add on? That's what I was trying to sort through.
It felt like a pile on to me.
Did you see, I saw an article, I haven't read it yet, but a headline at least, that there was some cities in Illinois that were using crime-free housing, this was the headline, using crime-free housing to evict for minor offenses. You might want to look at that, see what that was about.
I'm sure the, what's the group that goes around the country that loves to look into things, help me out. They investigated us and they found no foul play. They don't like our program. But, you know, it's
Auditors?
No.
Not the first amendment.
Thank you.
What was it?
ACLU.
Oh, yeah.
So, it has, I'm sure it's happened across the country. Whether or not, excuse me, they're using the crime-free addendum inappropriately. So, I mean, currently, if we have a noise violation, we give them a 30-day notice to comply. After that 30 days, the same violation, Colorado's a 2 strikes, you're out. It has to be for the same violation. So now whether property management companies are doing that or owners are doing that, I see it varies in the industry if people are actually doing that and holding that policy.
Financials?
And I have to go, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
And we go to skip public health and safety updates later since we kind of talked about cameras.
Yeah.
So for the AR, we did do some changes at the end of March. What we were finding is property managers were holding rent payments until the rents were posted and then applying them. But what we wanted to do is, because we're getting to that online platform of Rent Cafe, that we want them, when rents are received, to automatically post them the day they're received. Because the tenants are also going to see when their rents are posted. So you'll see in March we have a pretty high liability for prepayments, but that's because they were doing those deposits and getting them in. And then once they post rent, it's just it auto applies that they've already received to their actual rent. So it's definitely better practice if you get the tenant's rent. And as long as the check's not post-dated, because we have those types of situations too where people are leaving on vacation, they don't get their Social Security until the first of the month. They may not want that rent posted right away. So we have some caveats, but we're also working on a policy so that everybody has something that they're following and we're all doing the same. So that's a little thing you'll see a little differently in March's numbers, is that we have 19,000 in prepays. The other thing is we have, so the 2 properties that have the highest balance are Briarwood and Sweets. Briarwood is one tenant that is working, the group is working with her to get additional funding somewhere else to see if she can start making payments. And then there's 2 actual units at the Sweets. Probably more than likely we're going through eviction. One moved out finally on April 30th, and that one was what we're also finding is it's really hard when you have somebody that passes away and they have no next of kin. You have to go through the whole eviction process to get the unit back. And so you can't do anything. For the Suites, it's a subsidy unit, and the subsidy can only pay 14 days of rent after that individual dies. So we actually have to, a lot of this is that subsidy rent accumulating on their ledger until we can actually physically get them moved out, and more than likely we're just going to have to write this off because if they're deceased, there's no way to collect. So we'll just be writing off those balances, but totally 3 tenants in total that make up a pretty large balance.
Those 2. So none of them are on vouchers, correct?
For the Suites, yes, they are on vouchers.
So how does that figure into this?
Well, one was a deceased
Okay.
tenant. The other one might have actually been deceased too. I know there was two that were deceased, and it was taking a really long time to get through the eviction process. One happened April 30th, and the other one's currently on notice, so the notice could be the eviction piece of it. I wasn't able to see in Yardy. A lot of the times you can say on notice, but it doesn't tell you until you actually move out what the actual move out is for.
Yeah, and that really was my question, was whether or not any of those were on vouchers, but that significant amount there is pretty.
All of the
Yeah.
suites units are vouchers. They're all
Yeah.
PBBs, either with LHA or NHP. The one at Briarwood is not. That is not a PBB unit. We have 3 PBBs at Briarwood, but that was a PBB unit. Their units may be a little high based on, it's like $1,200 for a studio.
But the tenant is paying $1,200.
Yeah. So that's one thing we have to, that's what I said.
This is an off-the-wall question, which, when I was driving in today, when I went by, I dropped right over the office, which is the Veterans Administration here. Is there any thought to painting that facility?
So we've got some ideas in the works for that facility. So first of all, the Veterans Community Project is vacating as of June 30th. Their lease is up at that time, and well, we extended their lease to match their the date that they are looking to be out. They're not going to be holding office space in Longmont anymore. They're still going to have their tiny homes and work with their clients, but they don't need the office space. So it'll be empty as of June 30th, and we are brainstorming potential tenants, or is there an organization out there that could have a need for commercial space and units? Not ever displacing the people that are there, but if people move out over time, they could bring their own tenants in. So there's some community organizations that are that have pretty close of a service model that we're considering, because we would be amenable to selling that building to somebody that can use it, because LHA does not need the commercial space there. So we're looking at it. The number one thing that we would look at is making sure the residents are taken care of, but seeing if we can kind of do a win-win situation with some other community organizations out there. In that case, I every single time I drive by it, I'm like, I want to paint that thing.
Yeah.
It looks
needs to be
drab.
spruced up, yeah.
The stucco color is just, it was probably fresh when done, and now it just looks drab.
Yeah.
We have, we did the parking lots there. We redid on the backside the entire ramp, and handrails look a lot better. That's something I would love to do, but I kind of want to see what's our long-term plan with the property first. We at least have it completely ADA compliant on the exterior, so we can sell it to, if that ever happens, which could be desirable, to an organization where that would be a benefit for them with some of that already done. But how much capital improvement we put in before selling it is up in the air, because maybe the organization is looking for more of a, advantageous sale price versus they would work on that over time if they wanted to. It's all kind of about different things. So it's on my mind too, but I don't have a plan yet.
Sorry. Kendra.
Oh, no, it's all good. That's all good. As for the financials, what I tried to do is kind of highlight for you guys, because I know it's a lot of information all at once, is to highlight those areas in green that are over 25% based on March budget, and if there's any underlying causes that are causing that. So we have some insurance repairs that are happening both at Hearthstone and the suites. The suites had a water freezing incident as well. So you'll see increases there. Our HOA fees for the Hearthstone and the Lodge increased almost $400 per quarter. So that we're going to start seeing an increase, and there's going to be an overage for that type of expenditure on that property. Our vacancies are also listed as being an issue. Some of them are over budget. Some of them are getting really close to being over budget. They're at like 90% already after the first quarter. So we're already going to be over budget probably by second quarter on a lot of these properties. Village on Main, we did finally convert to a perm loan, and that is going to be our first payment is in June. So, but we had pretty high interest payments from January through April. We were paying pretty like $50,000. So you're going to see a little high increase on there. Does anyone have any questions? I'll move to the voucher side. So I tried to do a little different of a report. This report, so after talking with Jessica, who was an amazing HUD, she kind of gave us an insight into how HUD budgets for the next year. So the way HUD looks at our financial position is, what did you expend in the prior year? And they don't look at the last month. Like, if your last month is at $615,000, that's not what they're looking at. They look at what you incurred from January to December of that month. So last year we finished with $6.9 million. And so what I tried to do is, if you divide that by 12, that's technically what our allotment from HUD is for this next budget cycle. Now, what I would say is that we have not received our renewal of funding yet. Usually comes around the beginning of May. We haven't seen the email come through yet, so we're still waiting on that. It could change. They could come back and say, you're only getting this, and then we'll have to make some adjustments and start, reevaluating. But as you can see, we're already over that amount on a monthly basis by $37,000. In May, we kind of tapered down to 31, but currently we are 113,000 over what we anticipate as budget. There are also, the shortfall funding will also be monitoring, because we haven't been vouchering up, we have to kind of show on a case by case, on a month basis, that we're not increasing vouchers, because we've told them we're not issuing, we're not absorbing. So this is kind of a little voucher count to kind of show like where we were at in each month and where we're going to be at. So
Could you just start? What page are you referencing?
Oh,
I'm sorry. That's 34. Okay.
I have no idea.
No, that's right. Thank you.
I don't have the page number, but it's that.
Got it. Okay. No, I appreciate it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
this one right here.
Okay.
And then the bottom table will kind of show you how it kind of works. The voucher month is at the top, and then the actual GL payment that happens. Yeah, that one. Yeah. How the payment happens each month, and then where those vouchers are hitting. So like in January, you can see we actually paid out $611,000, but then you see in February, we paid out $604,000, but that attributed to voucher holders that a voucher in January and a voucher in February. So that's kind of how HUD has us track this. We have to track, even though our GL will say something different, to report to HUD, we have to basically report the money that was expended in that particular month for that voucher period. So that's kind of what that table reflects at the bottom. So right now, as of May, we're at 422 vouchers, and that's technically, we have 7 PVBs that are not leased, and we have 4 vouchers, 3 of which I know have ported out to the Longmont Housing Authority. It'll be all dependent on if they're able to absorb them, or if they're like us, if they're in shortfall and they can't absorb them at the moment, we'll still be paying for those vouchers. They'll still be our vouchers until they can't absorb them, or if they can't absorb them. We did just have one get absorbed by them, so maybe that's a sign that they can absorb, and then that would let's get to that point of not being a shortfall. The next one kind of shows, the next report is the HUD report that we issued. Usually you wouldn't see it in this format. Currently right now, they haven't reissued, well, we haven't received the funding. Usually when we receive the email that here's what your funding is, they put a new 2-year tool out, so we'll start at the top. So right now, this is actually projecting what last year's was and what this year's is, what's happening this year. So right now, with the vouchers that we have in play, we're looking at each voucher is about $1,488. Now realize that is, you have some that are higher than that and some that are lower, but just take your total count, divides it by the amount of vouchers you have, and gives kind of a standing to kind of help you project in the future to see where you're at. With this, we're looking at a shortfall of about $482,000, which is about close to a little less than 1 month vouchers, which is what HUD was saying they're seeing across the board, and that we're at least in a better position. Like it's not a full year that we're going to be in shortfall; it's just 1 month. But we may have to make some decisions once we get the funding from HUD, and once we get our shortfall person to reach out and schedule
Talk to us.
to see, because there are certain agencies that I've been told they've been told they have to start pulling people off and get themselves out of shortfall.
So those people are no homeless?
They either are responsible, if they want to stay where they are, they have to pay the difference. And if not, they would need to move out and then find somewhere they can afford, which is unlikely, and it could definitely impact on business.
How do you choose which ones?
There's HUD, well, our admin plan kind of lays it out, but HUD also lays it out. You actually basically, like, PBDs, elderly, families with children are usually exempt in the process, but you usually have to take the oldest first. So the oldest person that has had a voucher for the longest, if they're not elderly and they don't have a family, they would be the ones that would come off first. And so you would have to look at your whole portfolio to see where everybody's at. And so mainly it's going to be single adults on vouchers that are not required in that elderly status and bill on the voucher program for longest. Is kind of how it looks right now.
I know we don't have the definite information on this either, but I guess that just makes me think about the proposed 2-year able-bodied limits that has been sort of also, I guess I could have brought that up earlier. I mean, it seems like there's some possibility for how much tolerance, I guess, HUD will have for people who continue on vouchers in a longer-term way, and I think you know more about that than me, but...
There was also they're floating a work requirement kind of
Right.
welfare-wide, but that looked like it can SNAP or any of those programs, but there was discussion about timing some type of, if you're considered able-bodied or able to, then you'd have to work X amount of hours and receive the voucher. But then that reduces the voucher amount. The more hours they work, the more money they make, the lower their voucher. I mean, it's
Which
just
is
kind
probably
of
the point from the administration.
yes, I mean, it's true. If you can work, you should, and that means you're contributing more to your portion of the rent or whatever. But
They didn't build it for people to get off of it.
no, they didn't.
They really
seem
didn't
like
build
it.
it.
Yeah.
They did not. It's not built for that at all. It de-incentivizes people to
Yeah,
work or to
exactly.
ever get off of it. Because why would you? You're getting your housing paid for. I mean,
Well, and
it's
when they do go to work, what happens is
Yeah.
they have to pay more rent.
That's true.
They may lose their food stamps or anything else. So now they're trying to juggle all these differences that they can't. So why work? I wish they would have built it better.
So there is a possibility that you will have to
That
cut
is,
people away from the.
at this point, that is of the range of possibilities, that's the big red button version, that we are doing everything possible in advance to not have to do that. It depends HUD tells us we have to do. It depends on what we can work out within our own program. There's so many factors that we can't say yet. I mean, that is obviously the worst case option.
Is there any other way to backfill that number with, I mean, if HUD says, here's your number, can you use any other funding to fill that number in? Or no? Because it's HUD.
Well, the problem is it would be continuing funding. So
Right.
it's not just a one-year funding.
Right.
It's like you're
For
going to have this
years
funding
and years.
for years.
You're looking at not just,
Yeah.
480. What is that? 482. That's year over year.
So there's a policy question there, because I've heard some public housing authorities in the state kind of going both directions, where one is we can't let that happen to our community, we will find a way to fill the gap, and there's also, this is HUD's bed, they made it, they need to lie in it. If they're going to cause this to happen, then if we fill the gap, nobody will ever know it was a problem to fix. So I've seen both of those
Well,
just
and how
talked
long
about.
can you, this number wants, it'll
Right.
continue to grow year over year, and how long can you, how many holes can you stick your fingers
Right.
in?
And so right now we're in the what are the holes phase that we could even stick a finger in. It sounds very strange.
That was my analogy. I was thinking about, the ship, like with the leak.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry. That was all.
Certainly a
that's
ship
all.
analogy. Anyways, we're identifying what are all the levers we could pull.
Thank you.
There you go.
Another lever we could pull is the waiver that we're looking to get approved by HUD, which is basically bringing everybody down to the 2025 fair market rents. Most are at 2024. If they were at the 2024, you have to give them ample notice before you can just drop them down to a lower amount.
Because the landlords would have to agree to that lower amount. And then
No.
well, it would reduce their.
It would just reduce their assistance amount. So the landlords could hold it, but that means they have to come up
The
with
tenant would have to come up to that,
Yeah.
to meet that number.
Yeah,
Which
so
some
we're kind of
can.
analyzing like how many people will this affect, because a lot of our vouchers aren't really up to that 2024 rent limit, but some of them are, and I'll tell you, all of our PBDs are probably there. So that would affect all of the PBDs, but technically that could have the biggest impact. If you did lower them to the 2025 fair market rents, and that's all you can do, then that would lower your monthly amount in budget. So that's one thing that we would probably have to review. If they don't give us what HUD says they should be giving us and what we're to budget, we'll have to definitely cross those paths.
Well, that affects like the future projects, and then normally like if your project-based vouchers are not
Yeah.
so lower, then developers are gonna really look at that if that's how
They're
they're.
still very valuable because it's basically built-in guaranteed income, but it could change. Well, it depends on what they project. Usually they project an increase over time, but rents are now leveling. What it really impacts is our ability to even put out any project-based vouchers. So right now, we committed to Ascents right before / kind of right at the exact time we went into shortfall, and HUD's like, okay, don't sign any more commitments. And so the Abbott project, we committed it. We awarded project-based vouchers to them in 2023, subject to getting tax credits. And just yesterday, I had to revise our support letter to say we cannot commit to these unless we are out of shortfall. And so that changes that element. And so that's a funding gap then if we can't fulfill that. And that means they have to seek out additional gap funding, which the city is a resource for, that they couldn't ask for that if necessary. But that does, the impacts will reverberate for a long time. Don't regret adding this housing issues as they arise agenda item. Still end on a positive note, hopefully, on average over time.
Okay, did you want to say anything more about public health and safety or just let it
Nope,
go?
I think good there, and also the executive director report, I think we've covered everything.
So I have just a question. I'm going to assume you can answer this. So last week at council, which I was watching it on TV, you know that there's the sex offender house up there by Spring Creek and Fall River. And the people that live up there are pretty vocal about it. And so a lady, and they came actually to the board meeting, the Board of Commissioners meeting,
Right.
which I came to. Do you anticipate any of them tonight?
That's
'Cause
what I've heard of.
I don't mind coming if,
I have not heard of any attendance tonight.
No,
Have you?
and usually Mayor Peck also, if it's not on the agenda, like if the topic is not on the agenda, she doesn't allow them to speak during LHA Board of Commissioners, not
On
council.
a council level.
Last time they were able to speak because RSOs was on the agenda, so
and it's not on there tonight.
no.
But what that did do is the motion that passed last Tuesday was to revise the ordinance from 1,000 feet from schools to 500 feet from, now it's 500 for all amenities that they were including, which was schools, daycares, public and private parks. What that does do though is now Zinnia is outside the bubble. This is of course assuming they pass it in that fashion on second reading, which is scheduled for May 20th. But Zinnia would now be allowed to house registered sex offenders, which it does right now.
Yeah. it does.
And so that's the big change for LHA from what happened on last Tuesday.
So the question that came up from one of the ladies was, LHA does not allow sex offenders in their facilities.
In the senior
In the
facilities.
okay. Why does that not apply to us out there at Prairie Village as well? So, what is the answer to that? And I know there's fair housing and all that other kind of stuff. And of course, you can't answer people at council. I know that, but what would have been the answer to her
So
for that?
our tenant selection plan does not allow registered sex offenders because it matches HUD requirements, and HUD does not allow registered sex offenders in its federally assisted properties. So that's really the answer. So that's why we do not have registered sex offenders living at Spring Creek Fall River, but we cannot limit, LHA doesn't limit what happens around them.
And the city cannot
The city
limit what
does.
happens around. Yeah. Okay. They're a little bit hyper out there. Okay. Do you guys have any questions? All right. Okay, next meeting is June 10th. We will see you then.
That will be another where the board meeting and the advisory board meeting are on the same day.
Same day? Okay. And that's at 7 or 6?
The board meeting is at 7.
And there's no council meeting, just board meeting, just
Right.
board
Except for the
meeting.
session prior.
I might come. Just. Please.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
We're adjourned.
Oh, I completely forgot about that.